he was, a prominent figure of the Blue Mountains, crawling about on his hands and knees around the sheer face of a cliff. Hope and determination at the forefront, searching for any clues left behind by a surveyor that was here some 20 years prior. And then he found them. Who was this man, and what was it that he found? Johannes Wilhelm Berghöfer was born in Germany and emigrated to Australia in 1855 with his mother and 4 younger siblings, to join his father who moved here 2 years prior. Following the first wave of German immigrants in the late 1830s and a second wave in the late 1840s, the 1850s saw another influx of people leaving Germany for Australia with the promise of constitutional democracy and progress. By the mid-1860s, John's father William had purchased more than 4 acres of land at Sans Souci, a fertile coastal area south of Sydney already developing into farmland and home to a close-knit community of German immigrants. The family also became active members of the Anglican Church, quietly weaving themselves into colonial life. At 16, John worked as a farmhand for a local landowner before taking on a role as overseer of roadworks. At 27, he'd married Catherine Spring, who'd emigrated from Western Germany with her family, also farmers, settling nearby at Rockdale. After their marriage, John bought land from his father and began farming independently, later expanding his holdings further. John and Catherine raised a growing family, 4 boys and a girl, and by 1870, like so many hopeful men of the time, John caught the pull of gold fever. Along with a few mates, he set out on foot from Sydney's south, crossing the Blue Mountains towards the goldfields of Gulgong and Hill End. The journey was long, the hope strong, but fortune elusive. John never did strike it rich. Instead, he worked for several months as a carpenter and engineer, taught Sunday school to miners' children, and eventually returned home to his family and the land he knew best. Not long after, John accepted a position as manager of Conimbla Station, a vast sheep and cattle property west of Blackheath, owned by industrialist and grazier Ebenezer Vickery. In 1876, John built a homestead on the property and moved his family there. 2 more daughters were born in the valley, and John went on to build a schoolhouse, not just for his own children, but for the dozen or so farming families scattered across Conimbla. For 13 years, the valley was home. Then, in 1889, the family returned to Sydney, settling in Kogarah. But the mountains still called. In 1892, they came back, purchasing the almost derelict convict-built Mount Victoria Inn at the foot of Mitchell's Pass. The old coaching inn was renovated into a family home and renamed Rosenthal, a nod to the Berghofer family home back in Germany. Scenting opportunity in the growing tourist trade, Berghofer purchased land at Mount Victoria and commissioned the construction of 2 semi-detached leasing cottages. Known as Larsen's Cottages, they were built by Niels Larsen, a Norwegian-born miner who'd passed through the Pipeclay Creek goldfields near Mudgee. Larsen later anglicised his name to Peter Lawson upon the birth of his son in 1867. That son would become poet Henry Lawson. He followed the cottages with a general store and residence known as Berghofer's House. By now, he was a well-known figure in Mount Victoria, a settlement growing steadily with tourism and railway traffic, and home to a small but active German community. Berghofer took a keen interest in Australian history and, in 1900, campaigned for the construction of the Macquarie Obelisk on Mount York, commemorating Blaxland, Lawson and Wentworth's 1813 crossing of the Blue Mountains. The arrival of the railway at Mount Victoria in 1868 had transformed travel. Horse-drawn coaches now ferried tourists from the train station and nearby hotels to waterfalls, lookouts and onward to the Fish River Caves, later renamed the Jenolan Caves. But the steep convict-built Victoria Pass was struggling under the strain. Its 1 in 8 grade challenged horses and later early motor vehicles just as severely. Berghofer knew there had to be a better way. In 1906, aware that a survey had been conducted below the existing pass decades earlier, he set out to find it. Alone in dense scrub and on treacherous slopes, he searched the cliff face on hands and knees, scanning stone and earth with determination. And there they were, faint but unmistakable survey marks, still etched into the rock after 20 years. Berghofer pressed the Minister for Works to consider an alternative road, pointing to the ever-increasing traffic along Bathurst Road above. His persistence paid off. Construction began in 1907. The same year, Berghofer was elected president of the newly proclaimed Shire of Blaxland, spanning from Hartley to Lithgow. 5 years later, the new road was complete. Berghofer Pass immediately proved its worth. Though sharper in its curves, it followed the natural contours of the escarpment, halving descent time and easing the burden on vehicles. Stone embankments, blasted directly from the cliff, held the road in place. Then came the war. By 1914, rising tensions between Britain and Germany rippled through Australian communities. Suspicion fell heavily on those of German descent. When war broke out, hostility followed. German and Austro-Hungarian residents were forced to register with authorities. Many lost their jobs. Businesses collapsed. Thousands were interned as enemy aliens, while others lived under surveillance. The hysteria was relentless. In 1916, the New South Wales Labor government introduced the Naturalised Subjects Franchise Act. Naturalised citizens of enemy origin were barred from holding public office, serving in legal or civic roles, obtaining or renewing liquor licences, or voting in elections. Their name couldn't appear on any electoral roll, nor could they take part in referendums. Berghofer was squarely in its sights. So much for the faith, loyalty and hard work he put into the country he proudly called home. 22 ratepayers petitioned Berghofer to give up his seat at council, but he resisted. Unfortunately, the new act forced him to resign. Public pressure even compelled him to anglicise the name of his home. Rosenthal became Rosedale. The 1909 Berghofer Pass inscription was defaced in 1915, when the Cooee march from Gilgandra to Sydney used the pass, and possibly later with council involvement. After the war ended in 1918, Berghofer withdrew from public life. In his late 70s, he lived quietly at Little Hartley, restoring the name Rosenthal to his home. In 1927, the Duke and Duchess of York toured Australia following the opening of Parliament House in Canberra. During their visit to the Jenolan Caves, they travelled via Berghofer's Pass and later stopped at Mount York. Berghofer, now 88, was presented to the royals alongside his friend Henry Reinitz. "Oh, Mr. Berghofer," the Duchess is said to have remarked, "what a wonderful road you have made over these rugged mountains." A few months later, John Berghofer passed away. He was buried in the family plot at Mount Victoria Cemetery. Victoria Pass was improved for motor transport in 1934, and eventually Berghofer Pass closed to vehicles in 1949. It later became a walking track, now closed off due to unstable cliffs and rockfall, though locals still tread it carefully. The stone walls and culverts remain. The once vandalised inscription was restored shortly before Berghofer's death, and in 1990 his descendants installed a brass plaque beneath it. No longer a road, the pass endures as a monument, not just to engineering skill, but to a hard-working man whose loyalty and contribution were met with suspicion and injustice by the country he proudly called home.